this is a kind of a topic that I've been uh interested in, and obviously throughout like organizing have thought a lot about, and grapple with, didn't really understand for a little while, and like now it's obviously like understand it a lot better now. So first thing I just kind of stated the question is, what is cadre and how should Marxist revolutionaries interpret this today? A simple definition of cadre is a small group of people specially trained for a particular purpose or profession. These people have often undergone extra or continuous specialized education, or through like experience, just like time, which they have gained knowledge that is valuable for said particular purpose or profession. Cadre or cadre building is not specifically like a Marxist concept or a Marxist tactic, and is in fact used throughout capitalist society. So like this isn't, this isn't like crazy to, I guess, understand. But what Marxists have done with this concept is, rather than having a close body of specialists who only influence certain sectors, or you know, certain like specialized things, Marxist cadres seek to develop leaders who can confidently engage in society and struggle through a concise class conscious lens. And I want to state that cadre development is not base building, and I'll explain more on that later. Um, so, what does this mean for revolutionary Marxists today? I think all of us, or a lot of us, as you spend time organizing, like we've all kind of heard the usual, what are we doing? What is the plan? Um, like a lot of placing the cart before the horse kind of stuff. Um, and Steve really summed it up really well in the Firebrand article he did. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the one word in there. But he says cadre building is a collective process. The purpose is to build a stronger Marxist current that can intervene and influence events. Being a lone cadre is like being a socialist in your own mind. Um, unquote. So developing and building this current through cadre development, I argue, is our principal task in order to further revolution or revolutionary ideas. One of the speakers in the We Are Many, that little podcast thing, states that the U.S. are that in the U.S. that we don't have a social layer of working class consciousness. We have pockets and we have people, but not like a social layer. But through cadre and cadre development, this layer can be built. So, how have cadres worked in history for Marxists and non-Marxists? It's important to look at both, um, sides of the coin. Historically, we can look at our own political tradition and see cadre development unfold in successes and failures. Early on in Lenin's political journey, he joined a revolutionary cell in St. Petersburg, and became a vocal advocate of Marxism within the revolutionary socialist movement at the time. Um, entering, he entered in relationship with fellow Marxists, and he built ties with other Russian revolutionaries and learned more about the international Marxist movement. And while doing all of this, he was you know gaining theoretical knowledge, he was gaining practical experience, and not just taking a dogmatic approach on that, but using a scientific approach of, this work, this didn't, kind of a thing. So Lenin's, at this point was going through cadre and, training and building. Um, let me see. He was, yeah, like I said, he was gaining the theoretical knowledge, examining the situation unfold around Lenin and other revolutionary Marxists at this time. There was a social layer that developed through cadre, and like all of that hard work. Honestly, it's boring, but it's and hard, but it's necessary. That led to a vanguard, like a vast amount of people that are, consciously aware, of capitalism, and understand that we have to hold political power, but we also have to own the means of production and all of this, and everything. So where was it? I want to state before we go any further that cadre does not mean like it doesn't just mean a person who's very like book smart or an individual who just has quote unquote street smarts. It requires that combination of both. You know, you have to have both. It's important to remember like that is like the principal thing of cadre is like it is a theoretical knowledge and a practical knowledge. So like I said, it's important to keep in mind that just because this tactic is used by communists and has been used in organizing, doesn't mean it's used. Uh, doesn't mean it doesn't get used by like the right. So, take for instance Germany from the I guess you could say from the start of World War One to the 30s. Um, Rosa and the Spartacus League members and everything were doing in those early days a lot of cadre development and trying to build a stronger, and I say this like emphatically, radical social layer. But if we look on the flip side, you have the rise of the like the right and then Nazism, and all of this is coming out of cadre building, both sides. And with all these successes and failures have in common is the initial building of cadre, who uh, built these influences of influential people that could go out and like work with everyday people. So within Germany, there were several different things. There was the huge problem of eclecticism, utopian socialism, reformism, populism, that a lot of people like just, kind of like what we see here. If we just work within the system. So yeah, reformism was rampant, which at the time, wasn't really meeting the demands of people, especially considering that it's a highly militarized society and everything. And this ultimately kind of helped fascism use cadre building to their advantage through, the Freikorps and all of this. So um, yeah, I directly blame that on the failures of reformism. And that kind of brings me to my next point is why is this important for us as organizers or, you know, especially in like Firebrand and locally here in Denver Communists? Um, it's extremely important because I think we can look at our current situation in the US just like in a broad scope and see that, like Germany, then we have a very eclectic populist, whether it be, quote unquote left populism or right populism, um, social layer. Like we do not have a vanguard or, we've got like activists, I think is what the We Are Many discussion said. We have a lot of activists, um, but not like a concise thing. And that's kind of the importance of cadre, why cadre development and everything is important, because that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to build towards that, and counter these things that we always say like we want to be able to intervene and influence social movements and things, and that's because we're trying to combat these kind of eclectic ideas, and we're doing this through a very like strong common political understanding that we or that cadre in general build over time through study and struggle, which we always talk about. And this brings me back to the base building. Again, base building is not cadre building, in that We Are Many, the Philly socialists, you know, brought up multi-tenancy, um, and they started talking about all of these great programs, but the political education didn't come anywhere involved into it. It just pretty much was plugging people into activism, or I mean, charity, honestly. There was no real organization based on this, and that's because base building is kind of a populist idea, left populism, which again, through like like looking back at our at history, that populism and that confusion of a social layer and the confusion of the working class through these, you know, weird like these weird politics can lead to very, you know, uh disjointed paths. Like when we look here with just the recent movements, right? It's a lot of, I think at one point early on in the Palestine things, it was vote them out. It's like, who are we voting out? And that's kind of the idea is it's they brought in a very wide eclectic base of people, but there's no political grounding from the political organization that is leading it. So this kind of goes on to like my last point here, and it's our task. What is our task as a cadre-based organization or organizations? And to me, I think it's extremely important that you know, we recognize where we are. We're not a party. We're not we're not a vanguard. Like we are a collective of people who are trying to influence and build these. So a propaganda based organization. We, influence workers to our side by, intervening in struggle, being on strike lines, supporting, and I think that we all like, especially in Firebrand and DC, and I think this is very important in cadre building is we believe in criticism, but unity and struggle. So I think that also the big thing that we need to be focused, or the big thing with cadre based organizations at an individual level, it's developing the confidence or being confident enough to take these ideas, these strong political ideas that are formed with in an organization, you know, to just like your dinner table with some your normie friends or people at work and stuff like that. And I've said it multiple times. Political education is paramount. I mean, again, pitfalls, we see it within our own movements. The kind of pitfalls a of no political um, education or no political framework for anything, and honestly, kind of no willingness right now to do that. And I think that that's like our hardest task at hand is developing that willingness.